save the children.
The growing crisis for the Biden administration, the number of children detained at the border has hit a record high.
And despite the Biden administration's calls to end family detention, a senior border official says they're continuing the practice.
Save the children. Oh, save the children. Save the children.
We've got to do something, yeah, to save the children. We've got to do something, yeah, to save the children. To save the children. To save the children.
Me pueden robar, secuestrar o algo. Te pueden robar. Bien.
Save the children. Save the children. Save the children. Save the children. Save the children, save the children, save the children. Save the children. We got to do something to save the children. Save the children, save the children, save the children. Save the children. You gotta save the children. We got to do something to save the children. Save the children, save the children, save the children. You know what we got to do. Save the children. Save them.
Me pueden robar, secuestrar o algo. Te pueden robar. Bien.
Save them, save them. Save the babies. It's all on me and you. Save the children. We gotta save the babies. Children. Oh, save the children. Oh, we gotta save the children. Save the children. We got to save.
Plans to visit the border?
Kamala with the laugh. Ha ha, that's so funny. Ha ha ha. She kept laughing. No, I said, is there something wrong with her? She kept laughing. At very, serious questions.
Conditions are squalid.
Looks like a prison in there, and these are not prisoners. These are minors. These are children. Half of that warehouse over there has been turned into some kind of human cattle pen.
We begin today with the growing crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border.
The Biden administration has ordered FEMA to help with the surge. What about the children who do not have any family contacts here in the U.S., who come unaccompanied and don't have anywhere they can safely go?
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, 170,000 people were apprehended at the southern border in March. That includes the nearly 19,000 migrant children who are still in federal custody.
Last month, U.S. border officials apprehended nearly 19,000 unaccompanied children. That is an all-time monthly high, Elaine.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what is the latest on that number of migrant children currently in Border Patrol custody? 19,000, Camilo?
Yeah, so right now, as we speak, there are nearly 19,000 unaccompanied migrant children in federal custody across the board. Most of them, more than 14,000, are in shelters and emergency facilities overseen by the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the department that has the responsibility to care for these minors in the long term while it places them with sponsors who are typically family members in the U.S. But there are still more than 14,000 unaccompanied children, Elaine, in these Border Patrol facilities that are unfit to house them. These are stations or tent facilities that are designed for the short-term custody of migrants, mostly for adult men, and they do not have the same accommodations and services as these shelters overseen by HHS. And as we have reported quite extensively, these Border Patrol facilities continue to be severely overcrowded.
Well, 2 court-appointed inspectors found that government facilities holding migrant children along the southern border are, quote, stretched beyond thin. What else did the monitors discover about the capacity of these various sites?
Yes, in this court-mandated report, the independent monitors found severe overcrowding at the Donna Customs and Border Protection facility in South Texas, as well as other Border Patrol stations in the area. They mentioned that in one facility, Elaine, there were not enough care providers for 500 children under the age of 12. These are children who need special care and services because they're so young. The government refers to them as tender age children. The report also found that medical staff at the facilities were severely overburdened because of the number of children coming in. This facility had more than 3,000 unaccompanied children, and it is supposed to have only 250 migrants under its pandemic era capacity. So it is way past its COVID era capacity, and some of these children are not getting the services that they need because of the overcrowding. Again, the main issue is the overcrowding, which has continued to be widespread because there are not enough HHS shelter beds for these children.
Lawyers who toured emergency facilities for migrant children set up by the Biden administration found that children there had limited access to case managers, phone calls, and outside recreation. What more can you tell us, and how is the Department of Health and Human Services responding?
What the lawyers found in these emergency facilities, again, operated by the Department of Health and Human Services, is that children do not have adequate access to case managers, who are officials who help place them with sponsors in the U.S., and that they have limited access to phone calls to family and recreation. Children, for example, held at a convention center in Dallas have completely no access to outside recreation. They have access to a basketball court and a soccer field inside the convention centers, but because there's so many kids in that convention center, not all of them get to play every day. So that is a concern for them. They also noted that these kids are not receiving formal education because they are just, for example, getting worksheets and doing arts and crafts, but are not getting any English classes or any classroom-like activities, rather. And so those are concerns for advocates, but obviously they acknowledge the fact that the government is dealing with an unprecedented number of children.
First, can you give us your reaction to this news that DHS is going to send FEMA to assist at the border? What does that signal to you?
It's an admission that this process is not working as it is right now, Alicia, that there is a massive overcrowding situation at the southern border. The Department of Homeland Security cannot get a record number of migrant children out of its border jails, and whether they're cages, which is what I saw, or plexiglass dividers, which sources say they're using now in certain facilities along the border, it is not a place for children to be. And this is an admission by DHS that they can't get them out fast enough, that HHS cannot take those children in with child welfare professionals fast enough. And so now they're calling in FEMA, the emergency managers that deal with natural disasters. Facilities are supposed to be temporary, but what you're seeing is children backing up at a rate that they are there for 3, 4, 5 days, if not longer in certain cases. That is not only past the legal limit, but that is a recipe for not just overcrowding, but inhumane and unsafe conditions for these children. And so what does it mean? It looks the same for the most part as we saw during the height of the separation crisis. There may not be the cages there that we saw, but it's the same thing. Children, in some instances, according to reports, sleeping on floors, crowded together with each other, having to take turns standing up and using the restroom. It is, as Secretary Mayorkas said, and acknowledged and admitted, no place for children.
If an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let them starve to death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump.
Mr. Biden and other Democrats who consistently criticized the Trump administration for holding children in harsh facilities.
And those kids are alone, nowhere to go, nowhere to go. It's criminal.
Now facing an influx.
We are not saying don't come. We are saying don't come now.
But they're still coming.
The new administration was not ready for this migration, and critics say it should have been.
Children, young and alone. The pace of unaccompanied minors illegally crossing into the U.S. is now being treated as a humanitarian crisis. They're being held longer than that 3-day legal limit. Look, about a mile or so from me right now is a Border Patrol facility. And what local law enforcement is telling me is that here on the banks of the Rio Grande River, this is a hot spot. Mexico is right over my shoulder, and every day they are seeing hundreds of people cross through here illegally without an end in sight. People are coming by the thousands, many of them children that will end up in temporary facilities like this one. But as the government continues to get things set up, crossing the border is just the beginning of a journey that could be very long and confusing.
Lawyers tell us children are going hungry, some showering once in 7 days and in conditions so overcrowded that they had to take turns sleeping on the floor. To get the children out faster, makeshift shelters like this one in Dallas are opening up.
Start providing transportation, either by bus or by plane around the country, to reunite them with their families and friends wherever they're going.
The White House is refusing to call what's happening at the southern border a crisis, but a record number of children are crossing into the United States all alone. This is a real problem for the Biden administration.
Many of the immigrants are unaccompanied minors. Critics say President Biden's decision to eliminate strict Trump administration policies is causing the surge.
A surge that has been growing since Biden ended the Trump administration policy that turned children back at the border. Biden made a campaign promise to treat them humanely, but the numbers of migrants are now overwhelming some border facilities, and that's complicated by the need for more space to keep them safe from the virus. Some children are now being held in detention centers and even tents. Biden is sending in FEMA, the federal agency that responds to natural disasters, but he is now facing the same condemnation over inhumane treatment that he leveled at Donald Trump.
Clearly, the numbers are surging here and the capacity is dwindling. So FEMA has been called in to try to build more shelters suitable for all these young children arriving. President Biden is under increasing pressure to manage this current surge on the border. Many of these migrants telling us, coming from Central American countries, that they came believing that the Biden administration would be more empathetic to allowing them to pursue their asylum claims, pent-up demand over the last several years.
The border crisis in the United States is worsening. More children from Mexico are crossing into the U.S. without parents. Facilities originally designed for adults are being overwhelmed by unaccompanied minors.
Acting executive officer for U.S. Border Patrol in the region, Oscar Escamilla, said many of the children have gone through long and harrowing journeys on their own.
These kids cross by themselves. Obviously, the parent pays a fee to the smuggler the cartel member or the smuggler at this point will bring the kid over. We'll bring him to the river. We'll hand him over to the raft. We'll place him in a raft and say, okay, go. When you get to the other side, they'll explain to them, there's going to be an officer. They'll explain what we wear and tell them, turn yourselves into them.
A top U.S. official said on Tuesday he expects more than 1 million migrants to arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border this year, a growing humanitarian challenge for President Joe Biden.
There's a little girl that I talked to a little while ago. She said that she had lost her mom and that she doesn't have a father. So she's coming into this country because her uncle is going to be the sponsor. That's all I know.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said in a statement they were, quote, working around the clock to quickly move children out of the packed border facilities. The Government Health and Human Services Refugee Office did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
The Biden administration continues to come under fire over its handling of that migrant surge we're seeing at the southern border. Republicans are blaming the president's words and new policies for the spike.
These photos were released to the media, showing for the first time in months the conditions inside of a border facility holding hundreds of unaccompanied minors. The Biden administration's decision to reverse Trump-era immigration policies caused the massive immigration surge.
There's simply no reason the administration should have been caught flat-footed. After all, the president campaigned on that were sure to lead to this very situation.
Is what's happening inside acceptable to you, and when is this going to be fixed?
That's a serious question, right?
Me pueden robar, secuestrar o algo. Te pueden robar.
Save the children, save the children, save the children. Save the children. We got to do something to save the children. Save the children, save the children, save the children. Save the children. We've gotta all save the children. We got to do something to save the children.